We're going to do now is pivot to a reactions panel, and the high-level gauntlet was to ask these folks to think about what they heard as commonalities, challenges, et cetera. So Mary Kratz from the Interoperability Institute is going to be moderating the panel. Let me throw to her and let her introduce her panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you to all the members of the lightning round, all the participants. That was an amazing session. So this next session, we can all maybe take a little stretch because we're just about rounding, but this next session I'm particularly excited about. We have three distinguished panelists who actually are going to give us some expert insights into what they heard from the lightning round and all of the solutions that we just saw and experienced. So very briefly, please allow me to introduce Dr. Michelle Schreiber. She is the Director of Quality Management and Value-Based Incentives Group at CMS. She's also the Deputy Director for the Center for Clinical Standards and Quality. Dr. Schreiber is an internal medicine physician with extensive background in leading quality activities in large health systems, as well as deep experience with system-wide EMR implementation. Her area of expertise is the intersection of quality, data quality, and how do we transform this into interoperable digital systems. We also have Dr. Shane McNamee. Dr. McNamee is a clinical solutions architect and board certified in physical medicine and rehabilitation. He currently serves as the Chief Medical Information Officer for Perspectives Health Business Group. He serves also as the Industry Chief Health Information Officer to the Object Management Group's sponsored healthcare community, the Business Process Modeling Plus, or BPM Plus. He is also a board member of Integrating the Health Enterprise USA, or IHE. As a neurotrauma, polytrauma, rehabilitation physician, he comes to us today with unique expertise in that clinical care and patient aspect. His unique expertise and experience is with traumatic brain injury and complex neurological injuries, post-combat care, and polytrauma. And then last but not least, we have Dr. Lisa Moon, a nurse informaticist. Dr. Moon's work spans both health technology, data exchange, consumer health applications, and is an associate professor at the University of Minnesota. She studies health data sharing and preferences of computers. We've prepared this session with these three experts to basically be an interactive dialogue. So with that, I will turn it over, starting with a question. So we've looked at this combination of solutions with all of these different viewpoints on what we need to do for education, for policy, for standards development, for technology, and for this morning's session struck me some of the incentives that are offered by CMS. So turning it over to the panel to look at some of those common themes that we saw from the lightning round. Over.
All right, well, this is Michelle Schreiber, and I'm happy to go first. Can I just check, Mary, can you hear me?
Audio is good.
Okay, wonderful. You know, you can never tell on these things. You can't hear yourself. First of all, I thought that the lightning round was fabulous. Hearing everything that is going on across multiple organizations, multiple communities, I think we are finally at arriving at a point where perhaps the time has come to make this actually happen. From a CMS perspective, obviously we've been deeply engaged in the PASSIO project, and so shout out to Maria, thank you. And we're trying very hard through promoting interoperability to make it so that we're creating an environment where this can happen through interoperability. My own personal team is working on making quality measurement fully digital and transforming that so that we can really be creating the learning systems of the future so that we can have quality data that is embedded in the workflow of a clinician or organization and accessible and transparent to all. I have just a couple of thoughts about it though, because there's so much going on in this space. And I think I have a little bit of PTSD from the quality measures world and the quality measures ecosystem, where, you know, it kind of took off in multiple different directions with multiple vendors and multiple licensing fees and multiple things that people would have to use. And so does the patient choose this app or that app? Is it in their electronic medical record? How does somebody actually know that they have any of these not only just applications, but that this information is there? And I think that we probably need either a good use case, and it's true CMS could help create that, but still a good use case or a national rallying cry so that we're bringing all of these forces together so that we have a consistent way of doing this, a consistent way of accessing it, because I worry when things are a little bit disparate. The other thing that I would point out is something that we seriously wrestle with all the time, and that is the digital divide, sort of the new inequity in healthcare. Does everybody have access to this? Is it something that all patients and all users can understand? And do we need to do more to ensure that interoperability and that, you know, digital information is truly available to everybody? So I will pause there and turn it to you and my colleagues. Thanks.
Dr. Schreiber, I just want to tell you that there were a couple points that you touched on that that I think really we need to dig a little deeper in. One of them is the fact that CMS has been so great, right? Bringing policy and regulation and then funding actually into, I'm going to say, some of these large pain points. I've always, as a nurse, felt like looking at meaningful use and a lot of the paths, you know, around the policy and funding, that we had forgotten some of these really critical, I'm going to call them, you know, the consent transactions. And so I think that everyone that participated in the lightning round is just a really good example of all of the great work that's really being generated, right? But I do think that there needs to be, from my perspective, a coalescence. We need to actually come around, whether that is a single use case or if that's several use cases. I think that we do actually, you know, have to put the time, the effort, but we need to somehow also engage the patient. So most of my work on my research has been very much looking at the data sharing preferences of people, of individuals. And so I loved that in the lightning round that we actually heard that consumer voice coming through. But I think that a lot of the BPM work actually is showing us that our system isn't that smart yet. You know, we're not able to, for instance, predict, right, which individuals should need to actually have their advance directive on file, for instance. So I think that there's a lot of things that we can do. There are great examples today, but somehow we also have to use some of those mechanisms that we've used before that actually help us to kind of bring that innovative compliance piece kind of to light, so we can actually also get money, right, infused into the system so that the work can actually continue. Jane, you're on mute.
Of course I am. I'd love to jump
There you
on in there in the comments. I'll have to say that there are a lot of the same common themes that we ran through when a group of us talked in our pre-prep meeting. We had a really wonderful discussion, a bunch of professionals who are really committed and passionate about this. And we heard it again today, which is the way I like to say it is, with health IT was built wrong at its core foundations. It wasn't built on the patient as they get care over time and across boundaries in different ways. That's WIP, right? Work in progress from the theories of constraints, but rather was built upon healthcare billing and, you know, with a duct tape set of notes to the side of it that you could write on. And what we recognize, I think, that all of us is like the patient across boundaries and borders, which include time. right? So when we talk about boundaries, right, we talk about a few of them in healthcare, different IT systems with different exchange patterns, different organizations, different regions, different payers. You can, make it a little bit more complex as time goes on there. But at the end of it, it's a set of processes, right? And I love the concept of an advanced care directive, because we in healthcare all know that most of the stuff is processes, right, over time, right? And we also know from the inside that it's a really low reliability system when viewed from the individual patient perspective across boundaries. But the advanced care directory piece brings in the other piece of automation that's necessary, which is time. You're doing it in advance. You're doing it while you're doing it while you can consider. So at the moment that a critical event occurs, and that's where we're moving in healthcare in terms of architectures, is event-driven healthcare. Knows something has happened so people can react to it in a certain way and bring things forward. That we hear a lot of great examples of that in terms of, how you can actually over time using standards. And I'm a standards guy, so to me that's the key. And the whole point of it is that all the machines that I go to that happen to be hooked in the hospital someday when it's necessary, I certainly hope that they can read my semantic or my goals or whatever they may be in their systems. And in there is the important standard. So I heard something today that I really liked, which is around the confluence of standards. I'm a standards geek, and standards geeks have religion, no doubt, right? But at the end of the day, it takes a whole bunch of different standards to solve really important problems over time. Any industry at any time in any way. So the way that HL7 and FHIR and BPM Plus Health and bringing in, future automation or AI standards, you can start to see an ecosystem which processes in healthcare can be arranged like air traffic control systems, where you actually know patients that are in trouble before they crash, and you can see all the patients and see how many of them are in trouble and intervene rather than waiting for healthcare bills to come out a couple of months later. So in that is the patient, right? And that's that common theme. And I think there's so much passion from people here today, which is the thing that we all need and use together to actually knock down the walls. But the back end of it is from a tooling perspective. I also want to make sure to say that means all the tools that people are using, and if they have tools and they're internally looking, but they don't have standards at the edge that can interact with other tools like them in the marketplace, those are some of the sins of our parents' health IT system that some of us actually kind of helped build, right? Is tools that don't connect to each other across our journey. So really a brilliant work by all. In particular, I tip my hat to Dr. Rose for pulling that whole last section together. Brilliant bunch of speakers, and couldn't be more impressed.
Very good. So some excellent comments. One of the things that I took out of the lightning round is just the opportunity to bring these various efforts and solutions together. And all of you sort of touched on that it will take a community to solve some of the health IT interoperability challenges. Can you elaborate a little more on that? What do we need to really bring together this passion, this energy from today into the solution space, something that can really address patient needs, providing us with all the different aspects that you highlighted?
Demand standards, demand them as part of your rights, right? When you're building new IT or new things, you have two choices when it comes to standards. Don't choose a standard, or do choose a standard. When healthcare got built initially, we didn't have data standards, so we couldn't choose FHIR and those different things. It took us a long time in the marketplace to work through that to get there. Now that we're at the dawn of the age of automation in healthcare, choose standards, choose automation standards, so we don't have to build 10 years of proprietary products that don't connect to each other and then have to rip all those back down again because they never did what they were supposed to.
Yeah. And I would say too that at a national level, I'm not so sure that we've done a good job of educating citizens, right, about end of life decisions. So I know we've struggled with that for decades. We've had campaigns along the way, but it seems like this, like there may be a need for a new campaign, to actually help people understand what their rights are at the end of life. Because I'm sure, you probably talked about this in the morning sessions, that, typically when people are making these decisions, it is at a time where they are in a highly emotional, very stressful, we don't have enough time, kind of in the moment. And that's a very difficult time, right? So trying to get those decisions, really mapped out. I loved the example of the conversation with patients and individuals and natural supports. I think that those tools are really necessary. And actually, I was thinking it would be great to actually have those be electronic and actually modularized, where they could actually be fit into other clinical health applications, for instance, where they could be ubiquitous or available, right, widely available. Because I think part of what we have struggled with in healthcare is that we have really great efforts, but they never really penetrate. We don't get the saturation right across the entire healthcare ecosystem. So I think that there is a lot of that patient education piece, but anything that we have that's a tool, we need to figure out how to get the widespread adoption of it.
In the end, I think it's also creating enthusiasm for consensus in making this happen. So there are many ways to do that. You can engage, various leaders to do that and bring it to the surface. You can engage legislators to bring it to the surface. And when you do that, you can also engage through government to bring this to the surface. I mean, realistically, meaningful use / now called promoting interoperability, the program of CMS and in collaboration with ONC really did help drive bringing electronic medical records in the beginning of the digital transformation to healthcare. And Lisa's right, it left out components. It left out, quite honestly, post-acute care. We're talking about advanced care directives, and, the post-acute care facilities were not included in the original meaningful use dollars. But is there something on the horizon? In the question that has to be asked then is, where does that fit in with all the other national priorities that people want to create law and legislation and give funding to? And I don't know, but I think when large groups come together and it rises to the surface and consumers demand this, the large organizations are demanding this, it may be that we're on the precipice of this being something that, I don't want to say gets mandated, because usually in the government, the programs start with, well, are you doing this? And then if you're doing it, how is it working? So it's usually a gradual transition, but it may be a time when we're approaching that. And that can help galvanize this to occur. I just don't know where it stands quite yet.
It could. And, I was just thinking about other places where we put goals and objectives as a nation, like, healthy people, for instance. I mean, is there a need nationally to have a healthy people, 2022, 2023 goal, that we have advanced directives, more widely used? I don't think it's there today. I don't think I've ever seen it. But those healthy people goals are used in a lot of healthcare organizations, including our Medicaid population, to actually bridge the gap where they have quality issues and trying to make care more equitable. They often use Healthy People 2020. So even looking for kind of a measure across or some kind of a driving policy lever, I think would be really important.
Wonderful. We're nearing the end of our time, and some of your comments really struck me and made me think about the Interoperability Institute's workforce program. Part of our program is training that next generation health IT workforce. Who is going to take over for all of us, providing the opportunity to get exposed and understand how the standards organizations work, to have opportunities to work on government projects and understand how our national policies work. So coming out of today and out of the lightning round, as we finish up this panel, final comment on for those more than 100 students that are part of the Interoperability Workforce Program, what's the key message to that next generation health IT workforce of what success looks like for electronic consent in the healthcare industry?
Well, I would just say you have your work cut out for you. So for the students on the phone, thank you for joining in this field. I would probably tell you have job security because these answers aren't, immediate and will require a lot of work, and that you really are the future of bringing this forward at a time when I think we're at a true pivot point and things are going to really accelerate. So we welcome your enthusiasm, and we really look forward to more and more, not just students, but more and more people being engaged in this.
Absolutely. One of the things that we always say for nursing students is that you need to find an opportunity around a policy issue and write a brief. Even just, testing your writing skills of being able to communicate about an issue. And so I think even at an internship program level, I think it's really important for people to be able to articulate a really complex issue and then have to communicate it to a legislator, for instance. So I think finding those really real pieces to give people kind of an opportunity to become comfortable with difficult situations to people who actually are in power or who could help to empower, right, through money, appropriations, new policy. So I think that's a really important piece that we have to kind of bring all the way through our workforce.
I'm gonna hit
Shane,
on
final
that
word
the
over to
future.
you.
Sure. I'm going to hit on the future is one of care without boundaries for hopefully all humans on Earth for their health care across the three actors, payers, providers, and patients. And we're starting to see some things that are happening that beginning to allow that, right? I will say from both a market perspective and a technology perspective, I'll echo everybody else's comments here, is that things are changing fast. There's a bunch of emerging marketplaces around applying automation tools to make things better, faster, and cheaper and feel better. That's what they do if they do it well, right? And move things into high reliability systems, right? That takes a lot of standards and a lot of different ways for machines to be able to work across, but that future of a care without boundaries is in with reach. I will say over the last year, one of the things that I heard that I remember the most was after we talked through the whole BPM Plus Health community with one of the major, I won't go into who it was, somebody who knows the market space and the technology and the standards very well said, wow, this isn't a technology problem anymore. This is a business problem now, right? So the technology is there. We have to be smart enough in healthcare to look outside of healthcare for hardened solutions. This isn't about AI. This isn't about some new machine that's going to come in and make everything work right. It's about bringing in technology that drive best practices to better endpoints within healthcare, and then automating away the menial crap that providers have to do every day that stand in the way of patient care and is ridiculously too expensive. We can do that as a future. You can do that for us and with us, but those tools are there, those techniques are there, and huge hats off to Mary Katz and IOI for that really important mission. So thank you.
Well, thank you to our distinguished panelists. I really appreciate you sharing your insights and your expertise and all of that just rapid shutter snapshot of the solutions that we saw in the lightning round. So thank you.